Aside from being incredibly offensive, most of my opponent's arguments don't actually respond to anything that I said. I'll begin by reviewing my arguments in favor of the LGBT movement making same-sex marriage its top priority. First, the ability to marry is a fundamental human right that should be afforded to all people. LGBT people should be allowed to make medical decisions for their spouses, or collect their spouse's pension, or use their spouse's insurance. The ability to be recognized as a couple by the law is fundamental. Even the Declaration of Independence guarantees the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What right do we have to deny that to people just because they have a different sexual orientation or gender identity? Second, the achievement of same-sex marriage would be a symbolic gesture which legitimizes the concept of the LGBT lifestyle. Just as the Civil Rights Act did for racial minorities, same-sex marriage would show the American people that the law would no longer accept discrimination and would lead to a societal consciousness shift that spilled over into other areas of discrimination like employment and violence. Now, my opponent makes a few arguments. I'll begin with all of the arguments that she makes at the beginning of her speech why same-sex marriage or being gay is bad. None of these arguments are reasons to vote negative. There are LGBT people in the world, and they already live together as couples and families. It's just a question of whether the movement should push to recognize those couples as legitimate in the eyes of the law. She says that homosexuality is a sin. This may be a view held by some people, but it should not be imposed on people who don't want to abide by their interpretation of the Bible. Not everyone is Christian, and they shouldn't be required to act as one. She says that it would undermine the definition of marriage. This argument was also made before about interracial and interreligious marriage, and they clearly cause no problems. She says that LGBT people shouldn't be allowed to adopt children. That already occurs. She even told us that she's met LGBT couples' children. This argument is clearly not a response. She says that LGBT couples can't reproduce. That's not the point of marriage. LGBT couples should be entitled to legal recognition regardless of whether or not they can have babies. She says same-sex marriage will lead to people marrying goats and toasters. This is ridiculous and has been disproven by the allowance of interracial and interreligious marriage. LGBT people are people too, not animals or kitchen appliances. Although I should say that I'm intrigued by the idea of marrying a toaster since I hear they're really hot. She says being gay is a psychological disorder. Aside from this being grossly offensive and incorrect, it's not any answer to my argument since there will be LGBT people no matter what. The same is true for her argument about being LGBT being a high-risk lifestyle. She says the general public doesn't want same-sex marriage. First, this is not true since recent polls have shown that 68% of Americans support same-sex marriage. Second, even if it were true, it's not a reason to deny LGBT people that right. It doesn't harm the public to let two men or women be married. Finally, she makes one reasonable answer, which is that the movement should focus on employment and societal inequalities. But she has conceded my argument that the best way to achieve these gains is by first getting a symbolic win in the most visible area of LGBT rights, which is marriage. Without first legitimizing the LGBT lifestyle, it will be impossible to eradicate discrimination in other areas. That's why I ask you to affirm.